Hello one, hello all, it's the gothiest ghost of them all, Casper in the flesh. And it's time for a review of Logic Ultra 85. This is the latest album from rapper, singer, songwriter, producer, Baltimore native, Logic, back with his new and final LP as a rapper, which seems to me, I believe, a prequel of his 2015 release, The Incredible True Story, which was an album to me that I felt had potential. I did dig the production, I did dig his flow, I did dig his rhymes. The only problem was he was trying so hard to duplicate who was ever relevant at that time, whatever rapper was relevant around that time. Also, I found the story acting to be kind of cringy, more on the dialogue level. And on here, that doesn't necessarily change. There are some improvements in the acting, I believe. Although the acting on the first one wasn't really that bad, but this one, not bad, but not top-notch either. At least not with the character interaction front, but I do dig how the storyline does tie into the album, and I feel as cringy as the lines could be, I can't deny that it does correlate to the album. Is it as cringy as our back and forths? I think you're an idiot, so I'm gonna say yes. Oh, you know, since I reviewed Vinyl Days, you should really let me Anyways, after truly giving this a listen, and giving this countless listens back to back, I could honestly and truly say this is definitely his best work yet. Honestly, this is my favorite Logic album. This is great, and it has finally lived up to the hype that Logic has been giving this for years now. He's been speaking on this for years now, and after giving this listens and enjoying it thoroughly, I can honestly see why. And I can certainly say he's had a decent catalog, not a terrible catalog. However, there definitely was a massive decline in quality with Confessions of a Dangerous Mind and his disappointment of a rock album, Supermarket. I still hate that thing to this day. But it honestly seems to me he's past that point. Sure, College Hill wasn't one of my favorites by his. I pretty much thought it was mediocre. And Bobby seems to keep things really close in terms of production on here, in terms of his production team. Also, like with this album, it revolves around a lot of deep introspection. It's a very personal album for Logic, and if you've been listening to Logic for a long time, you will find nods to his older work on here, such as a certain refrain from Fade Away, and also the ship being named Aquarius 3, which was also a track on No Pressure, while Logic spoke on the characters boarding and controlling the ship on that album. So yes, you're also getting the storyline based off Aquarius 3 as well. And the sound here, not revolutionary, not reinventing the wheel, but the production does go hard, it does have personality, and I really can't deny Logic's various flows on here and his super witty bars. And I can't really say there's too many derivative moments here. Obviously he does wear his influences on his sleeve, but I feel he's being more creative with it this time around. But for the most part, he is being unapologetically him, who is definitely a die-hard rap fan and has an undying love for the films of Tarantino and Nolan. And having mentioned those directors, having mentioned the music, it definitely serves as an aha moment later on in the track list. Also, with this being his last album, he definitely sounds more passionate and more determined this time around. And the production for the most part is very impactful. Take the opener, Paul Rodriguez, which has an atmospheric display of various distant sax lines that paint over these crisp drums with Logic's impassioned, charismatic flow. And I love how composed this instrumental is, how the progress and his momentum just work in tandem. There's also great bars like, UMC's better retreat, cut my legs below my knees, and still can't defeat me? What the fuck? This is like some Eminem in his prime underground before he was signed type shit. And honestly, not to kick the man while he's down, but this is definitely better than anything Eminem has penned in over a decade. So it's really student surpassing the teacher moment. As Eminem said on his Kamikaze album, he inspired the Logics. And in retrospect, I gotta say I'm glad he did. But maybe not in that time period, but I digress. There's also a humorous line about my guy Fantano's hairline, saying how they share the same one. And if you remember, he was definitely hinting towards this very album, Ultra 85, on the No Pressure album. So I definitely dig the callbacks, I definitely dig the tie-ins, I definitely dig his artistic references. There's also moments of the track where he raps about how he was under pressure, no pun intended, and how he really wanted this album to be great. He really worked hard on this. There was really a lot of dedication that was put into this, and it definitely shows, and I'm definitely glad he released it. And speaking of callbacks, we also get another banger, Deja Vu, with a barrage of euphoric vocals correlating with these chants, with these loop chants in the background, with this snappy beat and futuristic, jazzy, chill outro. And the reason I call it a comeback is due to the fact that the refrain Fade Away, which was on the Incredible True Story, an album released back in 2015, also lands on this track. And lyrically, Logic gives us a lot of insight, a lot of introspection, and calls to his therapy sessions where he's speaking on how no matter how much fame he gets, no matter how much success he gets, that does not mitigate the trauma that he's gone through, nor heal off of that strength. And it also speaks on why he's stepping away from rap. Now, if you've heard this album in its entirety, again and again, like I have, and you've listened, you've paid attention, and you're also a Kendrick fan, you've probably drawn the comparison to this album and Mr. Morale's and the Big Stepper. While not sequentially as tight, as thematic as Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, I do think there is a similarity here in a confessional aspect, and as we dig deeper into the review, you will see what I mean. The song Fear, I feel, falters in terms of production and melody. Like, to me, the song sounds like Anderson .Paak if he did Dressing Room Fodder. And the singing from Logic I don't really find to be all that great. However, there is some awareness here that I do need to speak on and I do admire. Like, if you're pursuing a passion, are you happy doing it? Are you doing it because you love it? Are you doing it because you're passionate about it? Is it worth pursuing? These are the questions Logic asks, and he does get very philosophical on this album. And I think in terms of lyrics, in terms of the premise, this is a very good example of that. But I think in terms of depth, I don't think he digs as deep as he does in comparison to the rest of the tracks here. Also, there is the dialogue between Tom and Kai, Kai being a space officer and Tom being the captain. And if you're a Toonami head, if you're an anime head, you probably notice this is the voice of Tom from Toonami, and also Spike of Cowboy Bebop, but I digress. And no, that's actually not Hannibal Buress as I thought it was. It's actually not. It's, I think, one of Logic's producers. But although there is certainly a tie-in to what Logic's saying on this album, disconnect in terms of the back and forth between Tom and Kai, it doesn't seem like they were in the same studio doing this for some reason, because the chemistry doesn't really align that well, nor does it do that script-wise, where Kai says he likes to collect film, he's very passionate about film, and then Tom replies he's a sci-fi junkie, where Kai said nothing about sci-fi. It's an interesting storyline, but I definitely wish the chemistry was better. And while I'm complaining, there's also this pro-AI dialogue. Boo AI, boo. But as rough as these skits could be, Logic definitely does bring correlation and connection to the story of the album with this, or I should say the themes of the album with this, and I think he does it well. I'll say this, it's not a Beavis and Butthead Speeding Bullet to Heaven type detriment, because even though these skits could be a little cringe. I do think there is, again, some good acting in there. And not only that, but the songs here are actually incredible. Such as the track Favela, that features this boom bap beat, beautiful ethereal woodwinds, and serene piano lines, record scratches. In a way, I'm reminded of Premiere on here in the 2000s. But not only that, but Premiere teaming up with Nas, Common in the early 2000s, okay? Traveling to the future and collabing with Lupe today. It just sounds so beautiful and meditative, but also old school. And I gotta admire how Logic is taking his influences and mixing them together and making them his own, which is what I've been asking for a majority of his entire career. There's great bars on here too, like, it also sounds like some classic Kanye production, honestly. And with Logic's energy, passion, and flow, he capitalizes on it big time. And there are gems on here like Want Beef, End Up a Vegetable, Hits Never Went to My Head, I Was Never Concussed. Get it? Like the successful singles didn't make him delusional, didn't gas up his head. And being humble with something narrow-minded morons online take as the equation of greatness, that being their wealth and their numbers. As Logic states here, my bank account greater, but none of the numbers define me. And I also love the line, getting bread because people fucks with it. Your whole shit stale, I wouldn't feed ducks with it. God damn. Yeah, bro wasn't lying. Like, this right here is truly his best work, and the anticipation for this definitely paid off. Like, you could tell he was really building, and you could definitely tell he was taking his time with it. But yeah, this is definitely one of those tracks, and if I went through every line here, we'd be here all day, and we don't have all day. Point being, Logic has come a long way, and lyrically, he's not fucking around. On top of that too, I also love how Logic is speaking on his pressures, his vices. On top of that too, I definitely dig how Logic is speaking on his vices, addiction, his pressures, and also the acknowledgement of his flaws, which he is also correlating to these musical tie-ins. Like, you'll really have to listen for yourself, but still, fantastic track. Following this, we have Gardens 3. The bass lines and almost dub reggae twangs on here are great, with the reverse bits of instrumentation and dreamy backing vocals. And his flows are so dizzying here with great wordplay. Not only that, but he brings so many fire bars here. Logic staying positive like dads on Maury. Growing up with nothing, we ain't even have child support. Sipping the fifth like I just pleaded. Also, Logic is also cycling back. He's cycling back to his days of poverty, his addiction once again, and also speaking on his successes along with the ironies. Like how he didn't complete high school, but he's speaking at Harvard giving kids financial advice. And then with Ghost in the Machine, Logic brings more gorgeously sampled production, distorted but punching drums that are showered with these old school soul samples, and loops that give way to these beautiful jazzy intervals that are super bassy. And Logic spits with so much determination in his cadence with these bars about being focused, taking care of his family, realizing and stating what truly matters to him, which is being authentic, being himself, having his loved ones, having his health, not being fazed by his naysayers, and the vast dichotomy of his life then and his life now. I wouldn't say that this track has any mind-blowing punchlines or anything, but I feel this track excels in how celebratory this is, how uplifting it is, how motivating this is, how touching this is. And I also love the pitch down vocal change on the bridge, which leads into these beautiful vocals and a dope guest verse and a dope rapped guest verse, which his flow kind of reminds me of Jay-Z Blueprint era. So the track is very much the gratification of living and having people around you that love you, which carries on to the next track, which is the beautiful, enchanting Interstellar. That's very spacious with gorgeous vocals from Lucy Rose, and honestly one of the most heartfelt, true, honest moments here on this record. I would say lyrically a watershed moment for Bobby, and honestly one of the most honest moments on the record that really digs deep. I mean, this thing is very honest. as Logic is speaking on his mental health, his depression, while encouraging others to strive in hard times, which I know isn't really the watershed moment, at least not on this track, but it's still a great one, still a moving one. Of course, we've heard him go this road before with his 1-800 song, but I feel here he is digging a lot deeper. I feel he's drawing a silver line, showing how people's feelings are valid, while simultaneously encouraging people not to let certain things dictate their life. And I get it, easier said than done. But I feel since Logic has been in this headspace, I feel he does have more merit to speak on this and to connect with others who are going through this. And I can also appreciate how heartfelt and genuine this comes across. The next track, Logic, is getting more deeper here. He's getting more introspective, more personal here with some great points. That instead of seeking for vices, he is encouraging others to seek therapy, which is a good thing. I feel more rappers and artists should speak on this, while formulating a explanation on why his detractors, his antagonists, feel this need to antagonize him, as he's formulated this conclusion in his mind, which also turns into a lyrical watershed moment, a topical watershed moment for Bobby. As he is speaking on where the resentment comes from, he is speaking from the idea that maybe this person was touched as a child, beaten as a child, because as he confesses here, he himself was beaten and touched as a child, which is a very dark track, which is a very dark track, a very heavy track. And as I alluded to earlier, I do feel this is the Kendrick Lamar, Mr. Morale, the Big Steppers, Mother I Sober moment. And I feel Kendrick, shout out to Kendrick. Kendrick laid down the groundwork for rappers to speak on that. And I would hope with Logic speaking on this, this encourages other rappers to speak on it as well, to raise more awareness and also give a heartfelt, no holds barred, spill your heart out moment to speak on such tragedy. Unfortunately though, I do feel there are some rough spots on this album, like For Forever. I find the beat here pretty generic, and also there's this weird anti-vax bar on here. At least it sounds anti-vax to me. Also, I know I spoke on Kendrick, but he also does like this whiny refrain, like, yeah, and it just comes off to me as very derivative of Kendrick, like a bad attempt at him trying to remake Kendrick Lamar's Silent Hill. Also, he tends to do these speedy melodic flows at the end that come off pretty unintelligible, like on Love Me. And not to paint Logic in a egregious light, but I feel the type of wording he used, type of bars he used, aren't really the best time for now, especially when you spoke on abuse, with a bar that frames it as the underdog makes it and then they want to see him locked up once he does. It just reads to me as being an apologist for problematic behavior of people who have made it, and with the whole Diddy case going on right now, probably not the best timing, definitely not the best look. But again, he could be talking about something completely different, could be talking in metaphor, in a hypothetical, but to me, it just comes off kind of sus, especially when he's spoken on trauma of this nature that has happened in his life. But from here on in, it's mostly fire, like the very creative Teleport, which I feel is probably the most creative moment for Bobby on this album and probably in his whole career. Admittedly, I wasn't too crazy about the intro to this track. I thought it was kind of corny, but once I gave it a full listen, it grew on me and I got a full understanding of where he was coming from and was loving the execution of how he was doing this. And it was definitely a realization for me for just the fucking genius of this track. With how Logic is teleporting through all facets of his life, which starts with where he is now and his past marriage, how his divorce was publicized, then teleports him to the traumatic flashback of him being taken advantage of by his father's partner and his father disowning him. And based off the very graphic details of the lyrics here, his mother was incarcerated for a violent crime she committed, and then teleporting to joyous and gratifying moments as well, like him being a father, which is powerful to me. And granted, I never met the guy, never had a conversation with him, but I'm happy for him. And through every project I've listened to, granted, never been a big fan until now, but I was always curious what Logic was going to do next. And through every album, I've definitely seen the growth, and I've definitely seen changes within the lyrics too. I just find an interesting juxtaposition of the bars he was spitting earlier, where he was grateful on the incredible true story that he wasn't a dad, and now he's happy that he is one. And again, I feel like, even though I haven't met the guy, haven't had a conversation, I feel like I've been on this journey of Logic. Like, I've been getting breadcrumbs and tidbits of who Logic is. Like, he has taken us on this journey. So even though I didn't enjoy everything he's done, so even though I haven't enjoyed every project he's put out, I'm definitely appreciative of him taking us on this ride. There's also Antidote with Z Loopers that I feel nail the futuristic banger aspect. I feel it brings more of a fun, zany direction, especially with Z Loopers. With an animated, in-your-face vocal performance, the flows from Logic are various, and I feel he nails it at the end. Braggadocious, not too serious, but it's fun. And I feel definitely draws a much-needed contrast and break from the grim realities Logic has given to us on this record. I feel we're in need at this point of the record to have some cheekiness and fun, because soon after we get Once Upon a Time in Hollywood with these dreamy, soulful, chill, jazzy chords. I love the distant vocals cascading the background, the psychedelic guitar embellishments that gives it this pristine West Coast style vibe that remind me of Tupac in a way, which are really great and definitely complement the recollection premise that this track has, which are really great and definitely complement the recollection that Logic is giving us right now, which is really great and definitely complement the recollection and origin story of Logic. And there's some additional layers I feel that add to Logic's backstory here, and there's some additional layers that I feel complement the development of Logic's story. With the big string sections, the saxophone has a West Coast style bounce to it that reminds me of Dr. Dre, and the way Logic is spitting here, what he's rapping about, how he got into music, Tarantino films, and how much he's developed an admiration for music, for Tarantino movies, and how he gained a love of music and his favorites, and how that was his escape, and how his escape became his passion, and how it became an escape for his harsh realities of poverty, abuse, which honestly does correlate to the discussion Kai and Thomas were having on the ship. But not only his love for film is on here, but also how he is paying homage to the artists who he has adoration for. It's definitely a humble moment here. It's a accepting moment here, and definitely a powerful one. And I also love how the films that he loves, the music that he loves, he is tying that into the development of his life, and he is paying that homage to the artists who have influenced him. We then have Peace, Love, and Positivity, which has these blissful piano embellishments that kind of remind me of Stevie Wonder, over a boom bap beat that sounds almost Tribe Called Quest-like, as Logic not only speaks on his life, but very passionately raps about race relations, being yourself, being himself. And honestly, there's things on here I have no place speaking on, with me being a white man, but I do love the aspects he's showing on here. Like, as a man, it's okay to show emotion, breaking down gender stereotyping, and how there's artists out here putting out very subpar material and being awarded for it, while simultaneously being inauthentic in the process. And I love the line where he goes, "Stay giving Grammys to dudes acting, shit is trash, word to Oscar." Damn! And honestly, with him being so encouraging on this, encouraging aspiring artists, and leaving it off on this tone, on this note, this could have been the swan song. This could have been the last song on the album. And honestly, I thought it would have been great to end on. The last few tracks here are certainly a credits roll moment, especially City in the Stars, which is honestly taken over by a long-winded sung verse from Robert Ivory. And also I feel Logic is running pretty lyrical miracle here. And I know I stated that Robert Ivory sounded like Jay-Z. I take that back. I think it's ADA. I don't know. I'm trying to grasp that. I'm tired. Bear with me. Thank You for Believing, I'm not really too fond of, mostly due to the vocal lines here. I do feel they read as a dead ringer for J. Cole, but I do find this track to be endearing, and I do dig the guitar soloing and the choral vocals that are on here. Overall, I love this album. I really, really love this album because the bars Logic spits here, I feel dig way deeper than they ever did on his past projects. The self-realization, self-love, love for family, addressing social issues, addressing mental health issues, and not to sound cliche, the events that made him who he is today, and not to sound cliche, but I feel this is Logic's masterpiece. But given how this is Logic's last album, which he said before on No Pressure, but this time I believe him. And also I gotta give it to how next level the bars are here, how next level his introspection is here, and how fantastic the production is. And for longtime listeners, and me as a longtime listener, I finally realize who Logic is now, which I've been trying to grasp for years. He's shown it on full display here. He is a man with a traumatic past who loves art, loves music, loves Tarantino and Nolan films. And the music, the art he embarked on for an escape made him the man he is today. And with that escape, he found his passion, he found what he wanted to do, and he made a great album with it. While I'm not head over heels for every track here, I still love it overall. Definitely a very powerful album, a very honest album, a very introspective album, a smart album. It's definitely one of those cases where a rapper artist has this long discography and the last album they drop happens to be my favorite. Not only favorite album of his discography, but also one of my favorite albums of the year, for sure. Whatever his next venture is, I wish him luck with his family, success, and yeah, really got nothing else to say. I'm feeling a 4 out of 5 Black Hearts on this album. I'm Caspa. I'm your plug. Show me love. Give me a sub. Caspa. Gothic Ghost, Logic, till we meet again.